Dun, dun, dun. This music is always so dramatic. Dramatic music. Okay. Switch over to... Come on. There we go. Bookstore. Ooh, I am tall on the screen too. What the hell is going on? Okay, there we go. Hey Felix, how you doing? Hey Oni, congrats on getting first. And thank you for the hydrate and stretch. I did those. I did them before I unmuted my mic. Of plenty, oh valley of plenty, whoa ho. And thank you for the bits. Thank you for tossing a coin to your wolfer. Did that actually play on stream? Because I didn't hear it on stream. Did that actually go through? I mean, I heard it, but you didn't hear it. Okay. Scuff, the name is streaming. Let's see. SoundAlerts. Nope. Did get their scriptures, though. Okay, it does say SoundAlerts is on. That's kind of weird. Okay, well, this one play. Okay, I'm not hearing this one at all. That's not great. What is it with SoundAlerts and just refusing to work half the time? 2/3 of the time, actually. I mean, I'm hearing them, but they're not going out. That's... I didn't hear how the dog doing this time either. I mean, I heard it when you played it earlier, but I don't know if it went out. Okay. Okay, now the woo is... Oh, well, the woo is showing, but I don't hear it. What the hell? That's what I thought. I thought I had it set to monitor and output on both of them. Yeah, they're both set to monitor and output. See, I heard it. Okay. That's weird. I wonder if it's just because I hadn't logged into SoundAlerts for a while. But I'm not hearing that one. Why would it play one and not the other? They're both through SoundAlerts. That's just fucking odd. And that just cut off. Okay. Saying browser source refreshed. But I'm not hearing it there. Okay, I heard that one. Did you? Okay, so I'm hearing the one for points and you're not. That's from the extension. Okay, I heard that one when it triggered on my end, but didn't hear it when it went out. I'm hearing the howl. But the howl's not going out. What the hell? It's so weird. I heard that. And I'm clearly not a master at this. Can you hear my background music? Is it set the exact same way as SoundAlerts is? Yeah, I had it turned down really low, but that's weird. A limpin' dimp. I did not know that there was a limp dip dick Pokemon, but who knows? That cut off for me. Now it's really awkward. My computer tried to freeze on me just then. I do not know what is going on with this stupid program. See, I heard it that time. Did you hear it out there? Damn. I don't know how the system can be so screwed up. If I don't change if I don't change any settings on it at all, it works one day and it doesn't the next. It's not anything I did. Okay, just removed it and re-added it. It played for me that time. I don't know. I really don't. And playing one day and not the other without any settings at all changed. It's just ridiculous. Makes me wonder if any of my other sound alert things work right. Moving all my throne and stuff down to that same corner. Does blurb work? Did that play? Because it's set up the same way. Well, shit. I don't know. I heard that. But I did not hear it during the stream. I heard it on my end. Well, let's go ahead and switch to the library. I should still have... SoundAlerts are still set up on here. So different scene, same setting. I'm just curious. Not playing on the stream. Well... I don't know. Since there's not any change on my end and it's changing somehow there, I don't know what the hell is going on, so... So I'm just going to choose to ignore it like everyone else in the world does. And if you jump scare me, you won't know what's causing it. But anyway, since it is Friday night and we are 10 minutes late into actually getting into the stories, I guess I should get into them. And we are reading from the wonderful Red Fairy book. I wish I had the copy that is pictured, but that copy would also be, a few $1,000s. I have a slightly cheaper copy that was only $20. And I am trying to use VBridger, but so far it's not really doing anything. But what the hell was that? Is that someone else's stream? It's the only downside about lurking in other people's streams while I'm trying to stream. I'm hearing random stuff from theirs. So I'm getting jump scares whether they're mine or someone else's. Fun times, huh? Most of the reader gets my expressions a little bit more. It does not get my mouth movement. But it's hard to track a muzzle, I suppose. Anyway, our first story for tonight's Friday Night Fairy Tales. The Master Thief. There was once upon a time a husbandman who had 3 sons. He had no property to bequeath them, and no means of putting them in the way of getting a living, and did not know what to do. So he said that they had his leave to take to anything they most fancied, and go to any place they best liked. He would gladly accompany them for some part of their way, he said, and that he did. He went with them till they came to a place where 3 roads met, and there each of them took his own way, and the father bade them farewell, and returned to his own home again. What became of the older 2, I've never really been able to discover, but the youngest went both far and wide. It came to pass one night, as he was going through a great wood, that a terrible storm came upon him. It blew so hard and rained so heavily that he could scarcely keep his eyes open, and before he was aware of it, he had gotten quite off the track, and could neither find road nor path. But he went on, and at last he saw a light far away in the wood. Then he thought he must try to get to it, and after a long time he did reach it. There was a large house, and the fire was burning so brightly inside that he could tell that people were not in bed. So he went in, and inside there was an old woman who was busy about some work. "Good evening, mother," said the youth.
"Good evening,"
said the old woman. The weather outside is terrible, said the young fellow. Indeed it is. Can I sleep here and have shelter for the night? It wouldn't be good for you to sleep here, said the old hag. For if the people of the house come home and find you, they will kill both you and me. What kind of people are they, then, who dwell here? Said the youth. Oh, robbers and rabble of that sort, said the old woman. They stole me away when I was little, and I have had to keep house for them ever since. I think I will like to go to bed all the same, said the youth. No matter what happens, I will not go out tonight in such weather as this. Well, then, it will be the worse for yourself, said the old woman. The young man lay down in a bed which stood near, but he dared not go to sleep, and it was better that he didn't, for the robbers came, and the old woman said that a young fellow who was a stranger had come here, and she had not been able to get him to go away. Did you see if he had any money? Said the robbers. He is not one to have money. He is a tramp. If he has a few clothes to his back, that is all. Then the robbers began to mutter to each other apart about what they should do with him, whether they should murder him or what else they should do. In the meantime, the boy got up and began to talk to them, and asked them if they did not want a manservant, for he could find pleasure enough in serving them. Yes, said they. If you have a mind to take the trade that we follow, you may have a place here. It's all the same to me what trade I follow, said the youth, for when I came away from home my father gave me leave to take to any trade I fancied. Have you a fancy for stealing, then? Said the robbers. Yes, said the boy, for he thought that was a trade which would not take long to learn. Not very far off there dwelt a man who had 3 oxen. One of these he was to take to town to sell. The robbers often heard of this, so they told the youth that if he were able to steal the ox from him on the way, without his knowing, and without doing him any harm, he should have leave to be their servant man. So the youth set off, taking with him a pretty shoe with a silver buckle that was just lying about in the house. He put it in the road by which the man must go with his ox, and then he went into the wood and hid himself under a bush. When the man came up, he saw at once the shoe. That's a brave shoe, said he, but if I had a fellow to it, I could carry it home with me. Then I should put my old woman to a good humor for once. For he had a wife who was so cross and ill-tempered that the time between the beating she gave him was very short. But then he bethought himself that he could do nothing with one shoe if he had not the fellow to it. So he journeyed onward, and left it lying where it was. Then the youth picked up the shoe and hurried off away through the wood as fast as he was able, to get in front of the man. Then he put the shoe in the road before him again. When the man with the ox saw the shoe, he was quite vexed at having been so stupid as to leave the fellow lying where it was instead of bringing it along with him. I will just run back again and fetch it now, he said to himself, and then I can take back a pair of good shoes to the old woman, and she may perhaps throw a kind word at me for once. So he went and searched for the other shoe for a long, long time, but no shoe was to be found, and at last he was forced to go back to the one which he had. In the meantime, the youth had taken the ox and had gone off with it. When the man got there, he found that his ox was gone, and began to weep and wail, for he was afraid that when his old woman got to know how, she would be the death of him. But all at once it came into his head to go home and get the other ox, and drive it to town, and take care that his old wife knew nothing about it. So he did this. He went home and took the ox, without his wife's knowing about it, and went on his way to town with it. But the robbers knew it well, because they got out their magic. So they told the youth that if he could take this ox also, without the man knowing anything about it, and without doing him any harm, he would be on an equality with them. Well, that will not be a very hard thing to do, thought the youth. This time he took with him a rope, and put it under his arms, and tied himself up to a tree, which hung over the road that the man would have to take. So the man came with his ox, and when he saw the body hanging there, he felt a little queer about it. "What a hard lot yours must have been to make you hang yourself," said he. "Oh, well, you may hang there for me. I can't breathe life into you again." So he went on with his ox. Then the youth sprang down from the tree and ran by a short cut and got before him, and once more hung himself on a tree in the road before the man. "How I should like to know if you really are so sick at heart that you hanged yourself there, or if it's only a hobgoblin that's there before me," said the old man. "Ah, well, you may hang there for me, whether you are a hobgoblin or not." And on he went with his ox. Once more the youth did as he had already done twice, jumped down from the tree, ran a short cut through the woods, and again hanged himself in the very middle of the road before him. But when the man saw once more, he said to himself, "What a bad business is this? Can they all have been so heavy-hearted that they have all three hanged themselves? No, I can't believe that this is anything but witchcraft, but I will know the truth," he said. "If the two others are still hanging there, it is true. But if they're not, it's nothing else but witchcraft." So he tied up his ox and ran back to see if they really were hanging there. While he was going, he looked up at every tree as he went. The youth leapt down and took his ox and went off with it. Anyone may easily imagine the fury the man fell into when he came back and saw that his ox was gone. He wept and he raged, but at last he took comfort and told himself that the best thing to do was to go home and take the third ox without letting his wife know anything about it, and then try to sell it so well that he got a good sum of money for it. So he went home and took the third ox and drove it off without his wife knowing anything about it. But the robbers knew all about it, and they told the youth that if he could steal this as he had stolen the two others, he should be the master of the entire troop. So the youth set out and went to the wood, and when the man was coming along with the ox, he began to bellow loudly, just like a great ox somewhere inside the wood. When the man heard that, he was right glad, as he thought he recognized the voice of his big oxes, and thought that now he should find both of them again. So he tied up the third and ran off the road to look for them in the woods. In the meantime, the youth went away with the third ox. When the man returned, he found that he had lost that too, and fell into such a rage that there was no bounds to it. He wept and lamented, and for many days he did not dare to go home again, for he was afraid that the old woman would just outright slay him. The robbers also were not very well pleased at this, for they were forced to own that the youth was at the head of them all. So one day they made up their minds to set to work to do something which was not in his power to accomplish, and they all took to the road together, and left him at home alone. When they were well out of the house, the first thing that he did was to drive the oxen out on the road, whereupon they all ran home again to the man whom he had stolen them from. And right glad was the husbandman to see them. Then he was brought out all the horses that the robbers had, and loaded them with the most valuable things he could find. Vessels of silver and gold and clothes and all other magnificent things. And then he told the old woman to greet the robbers from him and thank them from him, and say that he had gone away, and that they would have a great deal of difficulty in finding him ever again. And with that he drove the horses out of the courtyard. After a long time he came to the road on which he was traveling, and when he came to the robbers, and when he had got very near home, and was in sight of the house where his father lived, he put on a uniform which he had found among the things he had taken from the robbers, and which made him look like a general, and drove into the yard just as if he were a great man. Then he entered the house and asked if he could find a lodging there. "No, indeed you can't," said his father. "How could I possibly be able to lodge such a great gentleman as you? It is all I can do to find clothes and bedding for myself, and wretched they are." "You are always a hard man," said the youth, "and hard you are still if you refuse to let your own son come into your house." "Are you my son?" said the man. "Do you not know me again, then?" said the youth. Then he recognized him. "By what trade have you taken that has made you such a great man in so short a time?" "Oh, that I will tell you," answered the youth. "You said I might take to anything I liked, so I apprenticed myself to some thieves and robbers, and now I have served my time and have become the master thief." Now, the governor of the province lived by his father's cottage, and his governor had such a large house and so much money that he did not even know how much it was. And he had a daughter, too, who was both pretty and dainty, and good and wise. So the master thief was determined to have her to wife, and told his father that he was to go to the governor and ask for his daughter for him. "If you ask what trade I follow, you may say that I am a master thief," said he. "I think you must be crazy," said the man, "for you can't be in your senses if you think of anything so foolish." "You must go to the governor and beg for his daughter. There is no help," said the youth. "But I dare not go to the governor and say this. He is so rich and has so much wealth of all kinds," said the man. "There is no help for it," said the master thief. "Go you must, whether you like it or not. If I can't get you to go by using good words, I will soon make you go with bad ones." But the man was still unwilling, so the master thief followed him, threatening him with a great birch stick, till he went weeping and wailing to the door of the governor of the province. "Now, my man, what's amiss with you?" said the governor. So he told him that he had 3 sons who had gone away one day and he had given them permission to go where they choose and to take whatever the work they fancied. "Now," he said, "the youngest of them has come home and has threatened me until I have come to ask you for your daughter. And I am to say that he is a master thief." And again the man fell a-weeping and lamenting. "Console yourself, my man," said the governor, laughing. "You may tell him from me that he must first give proof of this. If he can steal the joint off the spit in my kitchen by Sunday, every one of us is watching it. He shall have my daughter. Will you tell him that?" The man did tell him, and the youth thought it would be easy enough to do so. So he set himself to work to catch 3 hares alive, and put them in a bag, and clad himself in some old rags, that he looked so poor and wretched that it was quite pitiable to see him. And in this guise, on Sunday forenoon, he sneaked into a passage with his bag like any beggar boy. The governor himself and everyone in the house was in the kitchen, keeping watch over the joint. While they were doing this, the youth let one of his hares slip out of his bag, and off it set and began to run around the yard. "Just look at that hare," said the people in the kitchen, and wanted to go out and catch it. The governor saw it too and said, "Oh, let it go. It's no use to think of catching a hare when it's running away." It was not long before the youth let another hare out. And the people in the kitchen saw this too, and thought it was the same. So again they wanted to go out and catch it, but the governor again told them that it was no use to try. Very soon afterwards, however, the youth let slip the 3rd hare, and it ran off and round the courtyard. The people in the kitchen saw this too, and believed it was still the same hare that was running about. So they wanted to go out and catch it. "It's remarkably fine hare," said the governor. "Come, let us see if we can get a hold of it." So out he went, and the others with him. And away went the hare, and after all, in real earnest. In the meantime, however, the master thief took the joint and ran off with it. And whether the governor got any roast beef for his dinner that day, I don't know. I know that he had no roast hare, though he chased it till he was both hot and tired. At noon came the priest, and when the governor had told him the trick played by the master thief, there was no end of ridicule he cast on the governor. "For my part," said the priest, "I can't imagine myself being made a fool of by such a fellow as that." "Well, I advise you to be careful," said the governor, "for he may be with you before all is aware." But the priest repeated what he had said, and mocked the governor for allowing himself to be made such a fool of. Later in the afternoon, the master thief came and wanted to give the governor's daughter, as he had promised. "You must first give some more samples of your skill," said the governor, trying to speak him fair. "For what you did today was no such very great thing after all. Couldn't you play off a really good trick on the priest? For he is sitting inside there and calling me a fool for having let myself be taken in by such a fellow as you." "Well, it wouldn't be very hard to do that," said the master thief. So he dressed himself up like a bird, and threw a great white sheet over himself, broke off a goose's wings, and set them on his back, and in this attire he climbed into a great maple tree which stood in the priest's garden. So when the priest returned home in the evening, the youth began to cry, "Father Lawrence! Father Lawrence!" Because, that was the priest's name. He was Father Lawrence. "Who is calling me?" cried the priest. "I am an angel sent to announce to thee that because of thy piety thou shalt be taken away alive into heaven," said the master thief. "Wilt thou hold thyself in readiness to travel away the next Monday night? For then I will come and fetch thee, and bear thee away with me in a sack. And thou must lay all thy gold and silver, and whatsoever thou mayst possess of this world's wealth in a heap in thy best parlour." So Father Lawrence fell down to his knees before the angel and thanked him. And the following Sunday he preached a farewell sermon and gave out that an angel had come down into the large maple tree in his garden and had announced to him, because of his righteousness, he should be taken up alive to heaven, and thus preached and told them that everyone in the church, and they all, old and young, wept for him. On the Monday, the master thief once more came as an angel, and before the priest was put into the sack, he fell on his knees and thanked him. But no sooner was the priest safely inside it than the master thief began to drag him away over stocks and stones. "Oh, oh!" cried the priest in the sack. "Where are you taking me?" "This is the way to heaven. The way to heaven is not an easy one," said the master thief, and dragged him along till he all but killed him. At last he flung him into the governor's goose house, and the geese began to hiss and peck at him, till he felt more dead than alive. "Oh, oh, oh! Where am I now?" asked the priest. "You are in purgatory," said the master thief, and off he went and took the gold and silver and all the precious things, which the priest had laid together in his best parlour. The next morning, when the goose girl came to let out the geese, she heard the priest bemoaning himself as he lay in the sack in the goose house. "Oh, heavens! Who is that, and what ails you?" said she. "Oh," said the priest, "if you are an angel from heaven, do not let me out. Let me go back to earth again, for no place was ever so bad as this. Little fiends nip at me so with their tongues." "I am no angel," said the girl, and helped the priest out of the sack. "I only look after the governor's geese, that's what I do, and there are little fiends which have pinched your reverence." "This is the master thief's doing. Oh, my gold and my silver, my best clothes!" shrieked the priest, and wild with rage he ran home so fast that the goose girl thought that he had suddenly gone mad. When the governor learnt what had happened to the priest, he laughed till he nearly killed himself. But then the master thief came and wanted to have his daughter according to the promise. He once more gave him nothing but fine words and said, "You must give me one more proof of your skill, so that I can really judge your worth. I have 12 horses in my stable, and I will put 12 stable boys in it, one on each horse. If you are clever enough to steal the horses from under them, I will see what I can do for you." "What you set me to do can be done," said the master thief, "but I'm certain to get your daughter when it is." "Yes, if you can do that, I will do my best for you," said the governor. So the master thief went to a shop and bought enough brandy to fill 2 pocket flasks, and he put a sleeping drink into one of these, but into the other he poured brandy only. Then he engaged 11 men to lie that night in hiding behind the governor's stable. After this, by fair words and good payment, he borrowed a ragged gown and a jerkin from an aged woman, and then, with a hand on his staff and a poke on his back, he hobbled off as evening came on, towards the governor's stable. The stable boys were just watering the horses for the night, and it was quite as much as they could do to attend to that. "What on earth are you want here?" one of them said to the old woman. Oh dear, how cold it is," she said, sobbing, and shivering with the cold. Oh dear, it's cold enough to freeze my poor old body to death." And she shivered and shook again, and said, "For heaven's sake, give me leave to stay here and just inside the stable door." "You will get nothing of the kind. Be off this moment. If the governor were to catch sight of you here, he would lead us a pretty dance," said one. "Oh, what a poor hapless old creature," said another, who felt sorry for her. "That poor old woman can do no harm to anyone. She may sit there and be welcome." The rest of them thought that she ought not stay, but while they were disputing about this and looking after the horses, she crept further and further into the stable, and at last sat down behind the door. And when once she was inside, no one took any more notice of her. As the night wore on, the stable boys found it rather cold work, and to sit still on the horseback. It is fearfully cold," said one, and began to beat his arms back and forward across his breast. "Yes, I am so cold my teeth are chattering," said another. "If one had but just a little tobacco," said a third. Well, one of them had a little, so they shared it among them. And though there was very little for each man, but they chewed it. This was some help to them, but very soon they were just as cold as before. said one of them, shivering again. Said the old woman, gnashing her teeth together until they chattered inside her mouth. Then she got out a flask which contained nothing but brandy, and her hands trembled so that she shook the bottle about, and when she drank it, she made a great gulp in her throat. "What is that in your flask, old woman?" asked one of the stable boys. "Oh, it's only a little drop of brandy, your honour." That's true. "Brandy? Let me have a drop! Let me have a drop!" screamed all the 12 at once. "Oh, but what I have is so little," whispered the old woman. "It will not even wet your mouths." But they were determined to have it, and there was nothing to be done but give it. So she took out the flask with the sleeping drink, and put it to the lips of the first of them. And now she shook no more, but guided the flask so that each of them got just as much as he ought. And the 12th had not done drinking before the first was already sitting snoring. Then the master thief flung off his beggar's rags, and took one stable boy after the other, and gently set him astride one of the partitions which divided the stalls. And then he called his 11 men who were waiting outside, and they rode off with the governor's horses. In the morning, when the governor had come back to look at his stable boys, they were just beginning to come to again. They were driving their spurs into the partitions till splinters flew about. Some of the boys fell off. Some of them hung on and looked like fools. "Oh, well," said the governor, "it is easy to see who has been here, but what a worthless set of fellows you must be to sit here and let the master thief steal the horses from under you." And they all got a beating for having not kept better watch. Later in the day, the master thief came and related what he had done, and wanted to have the governor's daughter as he had been promised. But the governor gave him $100 and said that he must do something that was still better. "Do you think you can steal my horse from under me when I'm out riding on it?" he said. "Well, it might be done," said the master thief, "if I were absolutely certain that I should get your daughter." Well, so the governor said that he would see what he could do. And then he said that on a certain day he would ride out on a great common where they drilled the soldiers. So the master thief immediately got hold of an old worn-out mare and set himself to work to make a collar for it of green withies and branches of broom. Bought an old shabby cart and a great cask, then told a poor old beggar woman that he would give her $10 if she would get into the cask and to keep her mouth wide open beneath the tap hole, into which he was going to stick his finger. No harm should happen to her, he said. She should only be driven about a little, and he took his finger out once more, and she would have $10 more. When he dressed himself in rags, dyed himself with soot, and put on a wig with a great beard of goat's hair, so that it was impossible to recognize him, and went to the grand parade where the governor was already having been riding a long time. When the master thief got the mare, he went along, and so slowly and quietly that the cart hardly seemed to move from the spot. The mare pulled a little forward, then a little back, and then it stopped quite short. Then the mare pulled a little forward, and moved it with such difficulty that the governor had not the least idea that this was the master thief. He rode straight up to him and asked if he had been seen anyone hiding anywhere about in the wood that might be close by. "No," said the man, "that I have not." "Hark you," said the governor, "if you'll ride into the wood and search it carefully to see if you can light upon a fellow who was hiding in there, you shall have a loan of my horse, and a good present of money for your trouble." "I am not sure that I can do that," said the man, "for I have to go to a wedding with this cask of mead which I have been to fetch. The tap has fallen out a little way, so now I have to keep my finger in the tap hole as I drive." "Oh, just ride off," said the governor, "and I will look after the cask and the horse too." So the man said that if he would go to do that, but he begged the governor to be very careful to put his finger in the tap hole the moment he took it out. So the governor said he would do his very best, and the master thief got on the governor's horse. But time passed, and it grew later and later, and still the man did not come back. And at last the governor grew so weary of keeping his finger in the tap hole that he took it out. "Now I shall have $10 more," cried the old woman inside the cask. And he soon saw what kind of meat it was, and set it off homewards. When he had gone a very little way, he met his servant bringing him the horse, for the master thief had already taken it home. The following day he went to the governor and wanted to have his daughter according to the promise. But the governor again put him off with fine words, and only gave him $300, saying that he must do one more masterpiece of skill, and if he were not able to do that, then he should have her. Well, the master thief thought he might hear what it was. "Do you think you can steal the sheet off our bed, and my wife's nightgown?" said the governor. "That by no means seems impossible," said the master thief. "I only wish I could get your daughter so easily." So, late at night, the master thief went and cut down a thief who was hanging in the gallows, then laid him on his own shoulders, and took him away with him. Then he got hold of a long ladder and set it up against the governor's bedroom window, and climbed up and moved the dead man's head up and down, just as if he were someone who was standing outside, peeping in. "There's the master thief, mother," said the governor, nudging his wife. "Now I'll just shoot him. That I will." So he took up a rifle which he had laid by his bedside.
"Oh no, you must not do that,"
said his wife.
"You yourself arranged that he was to come here."
"Yes, mother, I will shoot him," said he, and lay there aiming. Then aiming again, for no sooner was the head up, and he caught sight of it, than it was gone again. At last he got a chance and fired, and the dead body fell with a loud thud to the ground, and down with the master thief too, as fast as he could. "Well," said the governor, "I certainly am the chief man about here, but people will soon talk, and it would be very unpleasant if they were to see this dead body. The best thing I can do is to go out and bury him."
"Just do what you think is best, father,"
said it. So the governor got up and went downstairs, and as soon as he had gone through the door, the master thief stole in and went straight upstairs to the woman.
"Well, father dear,"
said she, for she thought it was her husband,
"have you done it already?"
"Oh, yes, I only put him into a hole," he said, "and raked a little earth over him. So that's all I might be able to do for tonight, for it is such dreadful weather outside. I will bury him better afterwards, but just let me have the sheet to wipe myself with, for he was bleeding, and I have got covered with blood from carrying him." So she gave him the sheet. "You will let me have your nightgown too," he said, "for I begin to see that the sheet won't be enough." Then she gave him her nightgown. But just then it came into his head that he had forgotten to lock the door, and he was forced to go downstairs to do it before he could lie down for bed again. So off he went with the sheet and the nightgown too. An hour later, the real governor returned. "Well, what a time it was taken to lock the...
"Well, what a time it has taken to lock the house door, father,"
said his wife.
"And what have you done with the sheet and my nightgown?"
"What do you mean?" asked the governor.
"Oh, I'm asking you what you have done with the nightgown and the sheet you got to wipe the blood off of yourself with," said she.
"Good heavens!" said the governor. "He has actually got the better of me again?" When the day came, the master thief came too, and wanted to have the governor's daughter, as had been promised. And the governor dared do no otherwise than give her to him, and much money besides. For he feared that if he did not, the master thief might steal the very eyes out of his head, and that he himself would be ill spoken of by all men. The master thief lived well and happily from that time forth, and whether he stole any more or not, I really cannot tell you. For if he did, it was for pastime. And welcome in, Matsu. And yeah, it is really cool that they did have it gathered. It does make me wonder how many books they planned on doing, since they did run out of colors like that. I mean, when they went to violet and olive and all the other colors, it's like, okay, we know we're reaching now. Yeah, I figured I might as well read the colors that I have in order, so... I'd already read blue, so now I'm reading through red. I've got... I think I've got yellow, pink, green, and orange in my shelves right now. I'll work on the others when I get a chance. Yeah, I did notice that in the prefix he did actually give credit to everyone else who worked on it. So, let's see, in the preface of this, let's see. He credited Madame d'Aulnoy, Mrs. Hunt, Miss Minnie Wrights, and Madame d'Aulnoy, Mrs. Lang, Miss Bruce for the French, Miss May Seller, Miss Farquharson, Blackley, German, Sir Sigurd from the editor, William Morris's version of Osoga, Charles Morales for Pied Piper and Little Golden Hood from French, Henry Conroy for the same privilege for the Six Lilies from La Tradition. Then Francis Balfour, Mrs. Smith and Elder, and Mr. Ralston. So yeah, he really did credit everyone in the preface. Which, I think he probably got criticism for the first one for not crediting any of the helpers. So he credited all of them in this one. I should probably credit them too when I do book 2, because I'm trying to stick with Grimm on the first one, but I'm using the Lang translations. Well, I'm altering language in the Lang ones, so they're translations, but I'm trying to update it. When I ever get the motivation to go back to it. Going back and forth between doing that and my own biography, it's kind of been weird. Let's see, are ads still running? Yep, ads are still going. And the reason I leave the ads on is because I don't have any subscribers. I think I've got 4 people subscribed right now. Yeah, I've only got 4 subscribers right now, so gotta do what I can to support my book habit. Okay. And again, thank you. I think Guilty came in for the stretch and the hydrate. Yep. And ear switches. Okay, here's another one. This one just has it as brother and sister, and not little brother and sister. Well, little brother and little sister. So titles really do change between people telling the story. I honestly need to find the book that's got the list of all the tropes in it. I hate calling them tropes, but that's kind of what they've become. And I kind of want to set up some kind of challenge for all of us storytellers, that's to write one essentially using like a 20-sided dice, or just make a table of all the tropes, roll dice, and see if we can make up a story that has the ones that we roll. Because that just seems like it would be really fun to do. I mean, it's November, so we could technically call it a NaNoWriMo. So. I mean, I'm purposely trying to slip them into my own biography just for the hell of it, because I want my lore to be fairy tale based. And I was looking at it, and I've written 123 pages of my biography so far, which means my biography is already longer than my first book of fairy tales. But yeah. Do another stretch and hydrate real quick. Oh, I got a shiny one? Okay, gotta look at the shiny. Shiny, what I get? Carvana. It is blue and green. Just, Okay, blue and green instead of blue and red. Like green on top, blue on the bottom, light blue. That's kind of cool. Okay. I think that might actually be my first shiny. Is my first shiny? Excuse me. Why is there not a search for shinies? Oh well. Okay, back to the stories. So as I was saying, this one, in one book it's listed as little brother, little sister, and this one it just says brother and sister. And skimming over the first couple pages, it's that story. It's just no little. So, Oni, this is the story that you were trying to figure out who is actually the little brother and who is actually the little sister. It doesn't matter, apparently. Of course, all that ever matters in this story is that the stepmother's a witch. That should honestly be the number one fairy tale trope. But anyway, our second story for the evening, Brother and Sister. Brother took sister by the hand and said,
Look here, we haven't had one single happy hour since our mother died. That stepmother of ours beats us regularly every day, and if we dare go near her, she kicks us away. We never get anything but hard crusts to eat. Why, the dog under the table is better off than we are. She doesn't throw him a good morsel, and then two now and then. Oh dear, if our dear old mother only knew about it. Come along, and let us go forth into the wide world together.
So off they started through the woods and meadows, over hedges and ditches, and walked the whole day long. And when it rained, sister said,
Heaven and our hearts are weeping together.
Towards evening they came to a large forest, and were so tired out with hunger and their long walk, as well as all of their trouble, that they crept into a hollow tree, and soon fell asleep. Next morning, when they woke up, the sun was already high in the heavens and shining down, bright and warm, into the tree. Then said brother,
I'm so thirsty, sister. If I did but know where there was a little stream, I'd go and have a drink. I'd believe I hear one.
He jumped up and took sister by the hand, and off they set to hunts for the brook. Now, their cruel stepmother was in reality a witch, and she knew perfectly well that 2 children had run away. She had crept secretly after them, and had cast her spells over the streams in the forest. Presently the children found a little brook dancing and glittering over the stones, and brother was eager to drink it, but as it rushed past, sister heard it murmuring,
Who drinks of me will be a tiger. Who drinks of me will be a tiger.
She cried out,
Oh, dear brother, pray don't drink, or you'll be turned into a wild beast and tear me into pieces.
Brother was dreadfully thirsty, but he did not drink.
Very well, he said. I'll wait till we come to the next spring.
When they came to the second brook, sister heard it repeating too.
Drink of me and will become a wolf. Who drinks of me will become a wolf.
Like that's a bad thing. And she cried,
Oh, brother, pray don't drink here either, or you'll be turned into a wolf and eat me up.
Again, brother did not drink, but he said,
Oh, I'll wait a little longer till we reach the next stream, but then, whatever you may say, I really must drink, for I can bear this thirst no longer.
And when they got to the third brook, sister heard it say as it rushed past,
Who drinks of me will be a roe. Who drinks of me will be a roe. A roe's a deer, for those who don't know what one is.
And she begged,
Brother, please don't drink yet, or you'll become a roe and will run away from me.
But the brother was already kneeling by the brook and bending over it to drink. And sure enough, no sooner had the water touched his lips than he fell in the grass, transformed into a little roebuck. Sister cried bitterly over her poor bewitched brother, and the little roe wept too, and sat sadly by her side. At last the girl said,
Never mind, dear little fawn, I will never forsake you.
And she took off her golden garter and tied it around the roe's neck. Then she plucked rushes and plaited a soft cord of them, for she had fastened and that to the collar. When she had done this, she led the row farther and farther, right into the depths of the forest. After they had gone a long, long way, they came to a little house, and when the girl looked into it, she found it was quite empty, and she thought,
"Perhaps we may stay here and live."
So she hunted up some leaves and moss to make a soft bed for the little roe, and every morning and evening she went out and gathered roots, nuts, and berries for herself, and tender young grass for the fawn. And he fed from her hand, and played around her, and seemed quite happy. And the evening, when sister was tired, she said her prayers, and laid her head upon the fawn's back, and fell sound asleep with him as a pillow. If a brother had been kept in his natural form, it really would have been a most delightful life. Then they had been living for some time in the forest in this way, when it came to pass that the king of the country had a great hunt through the woods, and the whole forest rang with such a blowing of horns and baying of hounds and joyful cries of huntsmen that the little roe heard it and longed to join in too.
"Ah," said the little sister, "do let me go off to the hunt. I can't keep myself any longer."
And he begged and he prayed till at last she consented.
"But," said she, "mind you come back in the evening. I shall lock my door fast for fear of those wild huntsmen. So, to make sure of your knowing, knock at the door and say, 'My sister dear, open, I am here.' If you don't speak, I shan't open the door."
So off sprang the little roe, and he felt quite well and happy in the free open air. The king and his huntsmen soon saw the beautiful creature and started in pursuit. But they could not come up to it, and whenever they thought they were sure to catch it, it bounded off to one side into the bushes and disappeared. When night came, it ran home, knocking at the door of the house, and little cried,
"Dear sister, open, I'm here."
The door opened, and he ran in and rested all night in a soft, mossy bed. The next morning the hunt began again, and soon the little roe heard the horns, and the ho-ho of the huntsmen, and could not rest another moment, and said,
"Sister, open the door, I must get out."
So sister opened the door and said,
"Now mind and get back by nightfall and say your little rhyme."
And soon the huntsman and the king saw the roe and the golden collar, and they rode off after it, but it was far too quick and nimble for them. This went on all day, but as the evening came on, the huntsman had gradually encircled the roe, and one of them wounded it slightly on its foot, so that it limped and ran off slowly. Then the huntsman stole after it as far as the little house, and heard it call out,
"My sister dear, open, I'm here."
And he saw the door open and close immediately as the fawn had run in. The huntsman remembered all this carefully, and went off straight to the king and told him all that he had seen and heard. "Tomorrow we will hunt again," said the king. Poor sister was terribly frightened when she saw how her little fawn had been wounded. She washed off the blood and bound up the injured foot with herbs, and said,
"Now, dear, go and lie down and rest, so that your wound may heal."
The wound was really so slight that it was quite well the next day, and when the roe did not feel it at all. No sooner did it hear the sounds of hunting in the forest, it cried,
I can't stand this. I must be there too. I'll take care they shan't catch me.
The sister began to cry, and then,
They're certain to kill you, and then I shall be left alone in the forest and forsaken by everyone. I can't and won't let you out. Then I shall die of grief, replied the roe. For when I hear that horn, I feel as if I must jump right out of my skin.
So at last, when sister found there was nothing else to be done, she opened the door with a heavy heart, and the roe darted forth full of glee and health into the forest. As soon as the king saw the roe, he said to the huntsman, Now then, give chase to it all day till evening, but mind and be careful not to hurt it. When the sun had set, the king said to his huntsman, Now come and show me the little house in the wood. And when he got to the house, he knocked at the door and said, My sister, dear, open, I'm here. And then the door opened, and the king walked in, and there stood the loveliest maiden he had ever seen. The girl was much startled when instead of the little rose she expected, she saw a man with a gold crown on his head walk in. Go figure. But the king looked kindly at her, held out his hand, and said, Will you come with me to my castle and be my dear wife?
Oh, yes, replied the maiden. You must let my roe come too. I would not possibly forsake it.
It shall stay with you as long as you live, and shall want for nothing, the king promised. In the meantime, the roe came bounding in, and his sister tied the rush cord once more to its collar, and took the end in her hand. So they left the little house in the forest together. The king lifted the lonely maiden on his horse and led her to his castle, where the wedding was celebrated with the greatest splendor. The roe was petted and caressed and ran about at will in the palace gardens. Now, at this time the wicked stepmother, who had been the cause of these poor children's misfortunes and trying adventures, was feeling pretty persuaded that sister had been torn to pieces by wild beasts, and the brother shot to death in the shape of a roe. When she heard how happy and prosperous they were, her heart was filled with envy and hatred. So she could think of nothing but how to bring some fresh misfortune on them. Her own daughter, who was hideous as night and only had one eye, reproached her by saying, It is I who ought to have had this good luck and been queen.
Be quiet, will you? Said the old woman. When the time comes, I shall be at hand.
Now, after some time it happened one day when the king was out hunting that the queen gave birth to a beautiful little boy. The old witch thought here was a good chance for her. So she took the form of a lady in waiting, and, hurrying into the room where the queen had lay in her bed, called out, The bath is quite ready. It will help to make you strong again. Come, and let us be quick, for fear the water should get cold. Her daughter was at hand, too, and between them they carried the queen, who was still very weak, into the bathroom and laid her in the bath. And then they locked the door and ran away. They took care beforehand to make a blazing hot fire under the bath, so that the lovely queen might be suffocated. As soon as they were sure this was the case, the old queen tied a cap on her daughter's head and laid her in the queen's bed. She managed to make her figure and general appearance look like the queen's, but even her power could not restore the eye which she had lost. So she made her lie on the side with the missing eye, in order to prevent the king from noticing anything. In the evening, when the king came home and heard news of the son's birth, he was full of delight, and insisted at once on going to see his dear wife's bedside to see how she was getting on. But the old witch cried out, "Take care and keep the curtains drawn. Don't let any light on the queen's eyes. She must be kept perfectly quiet." So the king went away and never knew that it was the false queen who lay in the bed. When midnight came, and everyone in the palace was sound asleep, the nurse who alone watched the baby's cradle in the nursery saw the door open gently, and who should come in but the real queen. She lifted the child from its cradle and laid it on her arm, and nursed it for some time. Then she carefully shook up the pillows in the little bed and laid the baby down, and took the coverlet in all around him. She did not forget the little roe either, but she went to the corner where it lay and gently stroked its back. Then she left silently from the room, and next morning when the nurse asked the sentries if they had seen anyone go into the castle that night, they all said, "No, we saw no one at all." For many nights the queen came in the same way, but she never spoke a word, and the nurse was too frightened to say anything about her visits. After some time had elapsed, the queen spoke one night and said, "Is my child well? Is my roe well? I'll come back twice, and then farewell." The nurse made no answer, but as soon as the queen had disappeared, she went to the king and told him all. The king exclaimed, "Good heavens, what do you say? I will watch myself tonight by the child's bed." When the evening came, he went to the nursery, and at midnight the queen appeared and said, "Is my child well? Is my roe well? I'll come back once, and then farewell." And she nursed and petted the child as she did before. Then the king dared not to trust himself to speak to her, but the following night he kept watch again. That night when the queen came, she said, "Is my child well? Is my roe well? I've come this once, and now farewell." Then the king could restrain himself no longer, but sprang to her side and cried, "You can be no one but my dear wife!" Dear wife. "Yes," she said, "I am your dear wife." And in the same moment she was restored to life, and was fresh and well and rosy as ever. Then she told the king all the cruel things the wicked witch and her daughter had done. The king had them both arrested at once and brought to trial, and they were condemned to death. The daughter was led into the forest, where the wild beasts tore her to pieces, and the old witch was burnt at the stake. As soon as she was reduced to ashes, the spell was taken off the little roe, and he was restored to his natural shape once more. So brother and sister lived happily ever after. I cannot get the notion dear wife out of my head now. If only for the fact that in countries where they raise deer, just like when the fisherman has a fish wife, the deer farmer has a deer wife. And she was taking care of her brother who was a deer, so she was essentially a deer wife. So, unintentional puns. They're the best ones, honestly. I really wish I could go back and put that in my book now. Oh well, I'm not going to do another copy of that one. Until I get someone to illustrate it, which I may or may not be trying to do. Okay, how long is this next story? Next story is... where's it? Next one is 17 pages. Brother and Sister was only 9 pages. Should I read one more story or leave it at 2 for the night? See, Oni, I believe, is actually playing a game right now, so... I'm just dear wife. That's gonna get me. Every time I think dear wife, I'm gonna think dear wife. It's only 10:30. I like reading until 11. Maybe I'll read a third one. Let's see. I don't have an option. Man, I'm good with doing 2. I could probably read another, but this one would take me... It's at 17 pages, so that'd take me well over half an hour. Especially with the way things read on Fridays. Princess Elizabeth. Which one's this one? Yeah, I'll go ahead and kill it for tonight. Oh, ow! I lost 2 people. I need people for raid. I'm going to raid Oni. Just because I want to raid Oni. I don't get to raid Oni very often. So, thank you all for coming in, and I hope you have a good evening, good afternoon, good night, whichever you may be, whichever time zone you are in. And I will hopefully see you all sometime later. Have a great night and pleasant dreams. Bye.